You're watching all these pictures at home here at Westminster. They're being closely watched too. I'm joined on the green outside the Houses of Parliament by Caroline Farrow, a blogger for Conservative Women, and also by James Lyons, Deputy Political Editor of the Sunday Times. Thanks for waiting with us in this blinding sunlight. Caroline Farrow, what are your thoughts today? You see Theresa May going in there. Tomorrow she'll be going in there for good. Has she got there on her own merits, do you think?
I think she has, but I think it's a real shame that she hasn't got that party mandate. She's got the backing of the parliamentary party, but I know that there are a lot of Tory grassroots activists out there who are quite discontented that they haven't had a chance to have their say, and that was all decided for them by the 1922 committee. And I think actually she would be in a far stronger, more confident position were she to have had the overwhelming support of the party.
I mean, do you think that's a fair point, James? Her opponents have rather fallen by the wayside, rather than being in a contest with her and her beating them with her debating or her policies. They've fallen away for other reasons, haven't they, Boris Johnson?
I think it's fair to say this leadership contest has been more of a demolition derby than anything else, really. And she's the last woman standing. But look, we're in extraordinary times. We voted to leave the EU.
That's a skill in itself, though, isn't it? That's a skill in itself.
Exactly. And she's the second longest serving Home Secretary on record. The Home Office is notorious as a graveyard for political careers. This is a woman of substance. This is an extraordinary time for Britain, and you know, I'm sure this is going to cause her a few problems down the line. I'm sure she'll want a mandate, perhaps in 2 years when she's negotiated the Brexit deal. But frankly, what Britain needs right now is some stability, and that's what she's providing.
You're talking, Caroline, about the fact that out there, the wider Conservative membership may feel that they're not being represented here, but when we look at her and we look at how long she's been in the role of Home Secretary, she's very trusted, she's well known amongst Conservatives. She's very much loved by her own constituency in Maidenhead. They loved her from the moment they met her. I mean, she does speak to a large proportion of the Conservative electorate, doesn't she?
I think she does, but there is a concern that she was in the Remain camp. Now, she has said Brexit means Brexit, but I think one of the key things that she will have to do to reassure both her party and those of other political affiliations who voted for Brexit is deliver on that, and deliver on that, you know, as quickly as she can. And it looks as if she's going to be putting some of the key Brexit, some of the key Leave campaigners in key cabinet positions. So I think that can only strengthen her.
James, what do you think the summer holds for us now?
Well, who knows?
We all thought we were going to be watching the two ladies tussling out.
I was appearing on your
summer.
breakfast programme yesterday morning, and I wasn't expecting anything that happened for the rest of the day. So it's impossible to predict. I think there'll be a very messy fight in the Labour Party, of course, which will keep us all entertained over the summer. But I mean, what I would imagine is we're going to see that Theresa May. You know, we saw her yesterday morning setting out some of her vision and how she sees the way that the country should go forward. Aside from the Brexit issue, obviously the Brexit issue is very, very pressing. But she was talking there about other kinds of economic reform and you know, an industrial strategy. There's a Tory leadership challenger talking about an industrial strategy, which is a big change from what we've had before. So I think she'll set out her programme, then she'll probably go away for the summer and she'll go have a long think about how best to implement that. What we know about Theresa May is that she isn't someone who rushes into action. She likes to think things through. So I don't expect any sort of dramatic developments, as it were. Over the rest of this week, we'll see her put together her cabinet. As you've rightly said, we expect to see prominent Brexiteers in there. I mean, you said she was in the Remain camp. I think she was probably just about in the Remain camp. So I think we'll see a fairly even hand. What is fascinating, though, is what is her vision for Brexit? Because it's all very well saying Brexit means Brexit, but what that actually means for the country is a hugely wide open question.
And I wonder if that's what she's talking about. As we're talking to you, we're looking at pictures of Number 10. She's still inside there with the Prime Minister at the end of his last cabinet meeting. I mean, what do you think her vision for Brexit is?
It's not clear. I mean, this is one of the problems of the Leave camp, is that there seems to have been no actual concrete plans. And as James has rightly said, all she said is she means what she says. Now, I'm hoping that means that she goes forward and she negotiates, you know, from a position of strength. She negotiates well with the EU, you know, she's non-compromising, and I think she also needs to be forging other relationships, you know, with the US, with India, you know, and actually begin to sort of pull together some sort of cohesion, because what the country desperately needs now is stability, but we also need Brexit to go ahead, because I think if it doesn't, then it's going to cause quite a lot of political turmoil and unrest, and that can only be damaging in the long term.
James Lyons, Caroline there mentioned the rest of the world and how they will perceive her. How do you think, for example, Donald Trump, Hillary Clinton will look at Theresa May?
Well, she's not the huge figure on the world stage as David Cameron is at the moment, clearly, but she's got a great opportunity in September to introduce herself at the G20, which was intended to be David Cameron's swan song. Of course, he won't be making that now. I think what they will know is that she's a woman of substance and a pretty tough cookie, a bloody difficult woman, as she keeps like to badge herself. I mean, the idea of the Trump-Theresa May meeting is one to savour, really, isn't it? But I'd imagine she'd get on pretty well with Hillary Clinton.
Caroline, the reason why Theresa May is, of course, going into number 10 tomorrow is because of what happened over the last couple of days. Andrea Leadsom falling out. The row about motherhood. I mean, do you think that this in this day and age is something that the Conservative Party, Conservative voters really think is important in a leader?
I think they do, and I think it's really unfortunate because the glaring difference between Theresa May and between Andrea Leadsom was children. It was, from a personal level, but it was.
Weren't their differences much bigger on policy?
Oh no, of course. But in terms of when you're lining up two very seemingly quite strong female candidates, obviously personal family circumstances are going to be brought into it. And that's not a new thing. We've seen David Cameron invite people into his kitchen and use his family. We saw Ed Miliband do the same. When Tony Blair won the election, he was out there with a mug with pictures of his children. Politicians are inviting you to trust them. And one of the ways in which they do that is they try and identify with the electorate. They say, I am one of you too. And I think this is what Andrea Leadsom was trying to do. But unfortunately, because Theresa May had given this interview and said that she was unable to have children, it was interpreted, people sort of took vicarious offence, and they took it as being a very hurtful thing, when in fact Theresa May herself said she knew that no malice was intended. Leadsom had said, I don't want to make this about the fact that I have children and Andrea doesn't. But the thing is, having children will impact on your perspective. It will impact on your policy making, and it's fair to share how your circumstances sort of inform your policies.
But nevertheless, the male MPs don't really get this kind of scrutiny, do they, James?
I think you'll find actually Michael Portela got exactly this kind of scrutiny when he stood for leader. Norman Tebbit was talking about how his opponent was a normal family man and all sorts of things like that.
Wasn't that slightly a little bit a few years ago in a slightly different climate?
Well, it was still, you said that male politicians don't get this scrutiny, and he did. But I mean, I think there are two things about this huge row that's happened here. The first is it betrayed the fact that, frankly, Andrea Leadsom had been crushingly naive and was not ready for the top role. And I think the big difference between her and Theresa May, frankly, is not children. The big difference between the pair of them is experience, which Theresa May has in spades. And secondly, I think it also spoke to a kind of world view that Andrea Leadsom and some of those around her perhaps have, a more socially conservative view, which is obviously very much a part of a section of the Conservative Party. But although the Brexiteers have won and were leaving the EU, I think it's quite interesting that the socially conservative element of the Conservative Party here has not come out on top. And for all we know about Theresa May, how tough she is on migration and all the rest of it, she's not a social conservative. She was, of course, the first person to tell the Tories that they were the nasty party.
Thank you both very much. James Lyons, Deputy Political Editor of the Sunday Times, and Caroline Farrow, from the blogger from the Conservative Women. Thank you both very much. And we are still looking at those pictures at number 10, where Theresa May is still inside with David Cameron. She went in for his last cabinet meeting. She was the last person to arrive at 9:30. She's still inside. What are they talking about? Will she tell us when she comes out? Stay with Sky News to find out.